this lesson, we're going to talk about custard pies. I'm going to make a buttermilk pie, and I'm going to show you how to make faux buttermilk, just in case that's something that you don't have on hand or it's not easy to find. And then we're going to make one of my favorites, sweet potato pie. This lesson is all about custard pies. They're some of the oldest style of pie. Egg custard pie is the first one, I think the first one that I made when I was a little cook, 10 years old, and just getting busy in the kitchen, something I've always loved to do. In the South, we say egg custard. We don't say custard, we say egg custard, as if there were some other kind. Eggs are the central feature. Let me tell you what custard pie is. It's eggs and sugar and melted butter and lots of milk. Now, chess pie, the other general category of sort of old school pies, is eggs, sugar, and butter. The difference between custard pie and chess pie is that you're going to add in a whole lot of milk to that equation. In fact, milk is going to be probably the main ingredient, and it gives you more of a sort of rich, creamy, cheesecakey quality to the buttermilk pie in particular, and it just makes for a rich, luscious pie that I love. Okay, so we're going to start with buttermilk for this particular custard pie. But buttermilk is something which is easy to find throughout the South, but may not be so easy to find where you are. Or it may be sitting there waiting for you at the grocery store or at the dairy barn, but you don't have it in the house and you've got everything else you want to just make that pie. It's very simple to make a great buttermilk substitute, which I'm going to call faux buttermilk because that makes it sound fancy, but it's not hard. All you need are regular milk and something acidic, either vinegar or lemon juice. Lime juice would work fine too. And I'm using apple cider vinegar because that's kind of my go-to. I keep it around the house. When something says use champagne vinegar, use rice vinegar, I use apple cider vinegar. It always works out. And of course, that's because that's what my grandmother used. So I've got a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar and a cup of milk, and I'm just going to stir them together. And that's going to cause the milk to just thicken, curdle up, get a little bit tangy. Takes about 10 minutes. So if you want to make this and you don't have the buttermilk, go ahead and do that first. Then get your pastry ready, set out all the ingredients, and in 10 minutes or longer, you'll have what you need. And if you wanted to do that and you don't use it, put it in the fridge. That'll keep for a day or so. So I'll come back and show you how that thickens up after a while. But right now, let's make buttermilk pie. First thing, sugar and flour. I'm going to stir those two together. And I always want to mix the flour. I mean, you could dump everything in the bowl and get it together, but the flour is going to clump up unless it is, I can't say dissolved, but by mixing the flour in with the sugar, you make sure that the flour is going to disappear into the liquids. It's not going to be in little floury lumps at the end of the day. So that's just a very typical thing that you're doing in all kinds of baking, is putting the dry ingredients together before you get started. Okay, that's ready to go. Now I've got yummy, delicious, tangy buttermilk. And a lot of times you'll see buttermilk, it'll say low fat, doesn't matter. Anything that you see that has buttermilk on it is just fine, and you'll find lots of artisan buttermilk from, if you're shopping at the farmer's market, it's all good. I'm going to add eggs. This is 3 eggs beaten together well. And I'm going to add a little bit of vanilla. And then I'm going to mix all this together. I'm going to go ahead and put the sugar in, because remember, I've got melted butter, and I'm always just trying to be careful if I have, has actually cooled down a little bit, but if you've got very hot butter and eggs and you put those together, there's a risk that the eggs could sort of seize up and scramble, and that's not charming in a pie. So what I do is I try to get as much going on, as much cool mixed up stuff going on here, so that when the butter, if it's still warm, goes in, it's just going to dissolve into the mixture. And that's looking, I'm going to scrape a little bit here, make sure I'm getting all that sugar mixed up. And again, you could use a whisk, you could use a big wooden spoon, you could use a mixer, but why? If you do that, you're going to beat in a lot of bubbles and then have to sort of let it rest. So I would go low tech, but a whisk is fine. I just kind of have affection for using a fork. Now here, I'm going to go back and use my fork again because I want to get that melted butter mixed in really, really well. This pie is going to puff up a lot and sort of be rounded and beautiful and almost bubbly on top. It kind of has a lovely, appealingly curdled look when it's finished. But when it's in the oven, it puffs up, and when you bring it out, a lot of times it'll be all rounded and pretty, and you say, oh, I'm a genius. but then it's going to go back down. It's going to cool down and be flat, just like a regular egg custard pie. And don't think you did anything wrong. That's the nature of it when it's super hot, but you don't want it to stay that way. You couldn't eat it. So it's going to cool back down. So just enjoy that phase, but know that, like many things, it won't last. Okay, getting all my buttermilk in. And this is going to go into the usual 350-degree oven and cook for about 40 or 45 minutes. And when I'm giving you times on pies, remember, you've got a different oven than I do. You've got, maybe if you're using a glass pan versus a metal pan, if you're using a ceramic pie pan, usually things are going to take longer for that to heat through. So always think of the timing that I give you as a guideline, as a ballpark. And a wonderful thing that one of my wonderful teachers, I've just had so many excellent chefs and cooks and food writers that have educated me to this day. I was in a class with Jim Dodge, who's one of the great pastry chefs, probably 20 years ago when I was just getting started. And I didn't think of myself as somebody who could bake professionally at all. But he said, when you're baking and you smell whatever's in the oven, check it. And I thought, well, why would you check it? The timer hasn't gone off. But I started paying attention to that, and you'll find that when you have something baking, there'll be nothing, and then all of a sudden you'll just get a little something, a little bit of toastiness, a little bit of goodness, maybe 5 minutes in, 10 minutes in. And it doesn't mean it's time to take it out, but it's always good to look at it and I think it's a great piece of advice because it keeps you tuned in. And you should always be using your eyes and the aroma and so forth, not just the timer, not just the temperature. Okay, we're going to put this in the oven and bake it, and then I'm going to show you what a freshly made buttermilk pie looks like. And we'll also check back on our faux buttermilk and how the magic transformation happened. And here it is, buttermilk pie, hot out of the oven. Now it puffed up at first. I'm telling you, in less than 3 minutes, it's going to go back down. And you can see these nice little cracks. That's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. And it's got almost like a cheesecake a quality to it. If this were egg custard, which would be made with milk instead of buttermilk, it would be smooth and almost shiny. And in your classic Southern style, English style egg custard pie, you're going to use nutmeg, so you'll see little sprinkles of nutmeg on the top. I love buttermilk because it's a tangy variation, and any of these custard pies would be wonderful with a little bit of fruit on the side. If you had fresh strawberries or something, it'd be an extra addition. And I wanted to show you the buttermilk, which remember I have made my faux buttermilk putting an acidic ingredient, vinegar or lemon juice, in milk and letting it sit for 10 minutes or so. And look how it's thickened up. This texture. Now it's curdled, it's not what you'd want to drink anymore, but it's become a very tangy, thick, excellent substitute for buttermilk or sour milk in any recipe. So let that be your little trick if you don't want to go to the store to get buttermilk and you don't have it on hand. All right, I have to let this cool down. If it's hot, it's not going to cut beautifully. So we'll let it cool and then I'll come back and show you how wonderful it looks on a plate. I want to tell you how to prep sweet potatoes for the wonderful sweet potato pie. I've roasted these in a hot oven 45 minutes to an hour until they're tender. And then I just want to peel them out of their jackets. And now these are a variety of sweet potatoes. Some of them are as orange as a carrot. Some of them are golden like these, and they all have that same wonderful sweet potato taste. And you'll get a great pie out of whichever kind that you work with. But I'm just pulling off all that all the peeling, and because that part just got a little bit overcooked, I'm going to see, are there any other portions that are not quite wonderful? Get that off. And then I'm just going to chop it up into a place where I can mash it. And I'm going to go, that's one. I'm going to go ahead and peel the rest of these, and I'm going to show you how to mash them. I've got those all peeled and trimmed, and now I'm going to mash them, and this has the technical name of potato masher. And this one I found at a thrift store. I love because it's so old school. This is the kind you can find anywhere, and you just want to work through the potatoes, and I like to do it not in a bowl because I don't have enough surface area. I need traction. I need to be able to get at the potatoes from a lot of different angles. Whoop. And just keep going back over them. And some people like this very rustic. Some people like it smooth. If you want it to be super smooth with with just not much texture at all, what you want to do is put it through a sieve. Do this, and then just put it through a thin mesh sieve, and you'll have a very smooth product, which would be like what you get. Say if you make a pumpkin pie, which is another in the custard pie family, and you use canned pumpkin, you have a very soft, very tender and very smooth product. So this is, I want it as smooth as mashed potatoes. And so once I've gotten it mashed up with that, I kind of want to go back through and just make sure there aren't any gigantic lumps, because I want the final effect, I want to be sweet potato spicy custard. I don't want it to be mashed potatoes, or we want to forget that sweet potato is a vegetable. And once we put it in a pie, it's a dessert. A lovely southern construct. So that is beautiful. Now, you could do this ahead of time. You can cook the potatoes ahead of time and keep them. I would peel them and mash them up as close to the time that you're going to use them. But if you had to set this aside, cover it, and just chill it overnight, that would be fine. I would just let it come back to room temperature so that it'll be really soft for mixing in when you're ready to mix it up. All right, I'm going to come back and use this to show you how to make a great sweet potato pie. Got my sweet potatoes all mashed up, and we're ready to put together a sweet potato pie. One of my favorites in the custard family. Don't tell all the other pies. I'm going to start with sugar and a little bit of cinnamon and a little bit of nutmeg and a tiny bit of salt. I'm going to bring all those together, and I am going to use a whisk here. And if this seems familiar, are you thinking, hey, that looks like pumpkin pie? Pumpkin pie is in the custard family. And to me, pumpkin pie and sweet potato pie are completely equivalent. You could just sub one out of a recipe. The texture's a little bit different, the flavor's a little bit different, but basically you've got the same thing going on. My little bits of cinnamon have kind of gathered together there, but that'll work. This smells so good. I wish you could smell it. Okay, and now I've got 3 eggs and a little bit of melted butter and a little bit of vanilla. And I'm going to bring those together just using a fork. Now, if this milk looks extra creamy to you, it's because I'm using evaporated milk. And you'll see that in lots of recipes. If you look at sort of a standard recipe for pumpkin pie, it often calls for evaporated milk. And I think modern times you could use half and half, and a lot of people prefer to. When I grew up, I don't remember seeing half and half. And evaporated milk has been around a long time. It's an old-time ingredient. And it came about because people wanted to have access to milk and dairy. And back before refrigeration, that was a big deal. So sweetened condensed milk and evaporated milk are both, they're ways that you can have milk that's preserved and you can use it when you need it. And I am just a big fan of using evaporated milk in my baking because it's an old school Southern thing. And I also like the fact that it has almost a caramel flavor because the milk is cooked. It's been evaporated. So I actually like that quality in it, which you don't have in half and half. But half and half works fine. And you could even use regular milk. The richer the milk is. If you use regular milk, then you use evaporated milk, it's going to be a little bit richer. Half and half is going to be a little bit richer. And you know what? You could use cream. You're going to get richer and richer, and it's all good. Just kind of think about what sort of end result that you want. Okay, now I've got my basic custard ingredients, the eggs, the sugar, the melted butter, and the milk, in this case evaporated milk, mixed together. I've got a nice creamy essence, and I'm going to put in my cooked mashed sweet potatoes. And remember, as I said, these are a golden variety, and if I make it with, say, the fall crop of North Carolina sweet potatoes, it'll be a much more orangey color. But this is going to come out, if you look at a sweet potato pie versus a pumpkin pie, I think one of the main differences is texture. The sweet potato pie is going to be just a little bit more of a rustic, homey texture because people are more likely to use home processed, freshly made sweet potatoes than the canned puree. But the spices are the same. Now another thing, Southerners in particular use all kinds of things to make custard pies. And there is sweet potato pie, there's pumpkin pie, There is white potato pie called Irish potatoes where I come from, and that is exactly the same thing. And it's not a savory pie; it's a sweet pie. There's butternut squash pie, often called just plain squash pie, but we know that you mean butternut squash, which is the most common winter squash that you'd see around. And they're all wonderful. And I think that shows us just how ordinary and everyday pie has always been in home cooking. That it's not such a fancy thing. It's kind of, well, we need to have pie around because that's going to be just a sort of go-to snack, not just a fancy dessert after a meal. And people have always tended to make pie out of what they had. Okay, I've got that all mixed up. It's a nice sweet mixture. You know, if you wanted to have a sweet potato souffle, you could put this in a souffle dish and bake it and just have a crustless pie. But that's not what we want. We want a proper pie with a wonderful crust. And we're going to bake this off. And it's going to be, I think this is one that belongs in your go-to repertoire. Okay, that's a very full, very luscious and wonderful sweet potato pie. We're going to put that in, you know the drill, 350 oven for 45 to 50 minutes. It's going to puff up and it's going to come back down. It's going to be wonderful. I'll clean this up, put this into bake, and then we'll come back and show you what it looks like. So here you have it, 2 custard pies. I'm going to cut into the sweet potato and just show you how pretty it looks when you're ready to serve that. I always loosen it up a little bit. I'm just using a butter knife, a table knife. I'm awfully fond of my pie server for trying to get that point out. And beautiful. I lost a piece of crust on the back, but I'll slide that right over there and see if I can. Oh, look, serve it quick. All right, and let me show you just how pretty beautifully that came in. This is almost completely cool. This one is still a tiny bit warm, but I can go ahead and slice it. I'm going to use a sharp knife on the buttermilk pie. And I want to show you what can happen on the bottom, which is a little surprise sometimes. Sometimes the bottom crust will bubble up while it's cooking. And let me just make sure I've got that point carved out well. And let me get this out, show you what that looks like. And let's see, did I cut on one of the bubbles? Yes. You know what? I'm just going to flip it over. See how that pulled away? It's still cooked. That means that this slice is going to be a little bit thin on that side, thick on the other side. That's just the beauty of home cooking. Now, you could prick the bottom of the crust with a fork. Might discourage that, but it might happen anyway. It's just one of those kinds of things that I call it an artisan touch. I call it the rustic touch. And the pie is going to be delicious, no matter whether you got a bubble or not. So that's buttermilk pie and sweet potato pie. And imagine that this could also be butternut squash pie, and this could be egg custard pie, and then there's pumpkin pie. The custard pie family, one of the easiest, best kinds of pies that you can make at home. In our next lesson, we're going to learn about a real Southern classic, chess pie. Be right back.